Introducing the Poet Life Podcast. Go check it out today on your favorite platforms, including iTunes, Apple Music, and the website, thepoetlife.com.
Find a way, find a way.
Peace, everybody. What's going on? Another episode of the Poet Life Podcast. I'm J. Rod D, my good brother Christoph, right?
Yep.
So we're your co-host for the Poet Life Podcast. Today we have a special guest. We have a guest who we both are familiar with for a while now, as far as the name, as far as hearing about the brother. Never really got to see him. It was always like a mystique type thing. You had mentioned earlier, like mystique type thing, like a Batman. You see him on occasion, you hear about him all the time type thing. But I just found out, not recently, but during our interview with my poet laureate guest that we had, Miss Kenny Carson, that this is her husband. So we had a brother, 13 in Nazareth, who was also a phenomenal poet in the game for a while now. When I first started doing poetry, I heard his name a lot. Like, you ever heard 13? I said, no, who's that? Check him out. So it was like years ago. I'm checking out old stuff in 13. I'm like, okay, brother, okay, cool. And so, like, being at the age I was, it was kind of like trying to comprehend what you're talking about, you know, at the age I was. But now it's kind of like, okay, I can go back and enjoy it and actually, benefit from it. So without further ado, man, we have a good brother, 13 Nazareth here, and he's here with a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight for us. So good brother, man, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Peace. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for the invitation.
No problem, man.
Yeah.
So I guess we go get started. Like I said, man, I've heard about your name for a while, but I guess from the horse's mouth himself, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to the pen?
A little bit about myself, and what was the last part of that?
What led you to the pen?
What led me to the pen?
Yeah.
So I'll answer that in reverse.
Cool.
What led me to the pen initially was a combination of things. Tupac Shakur died on my 20th birthday. He was my voice before I found my voice, right? So the loss of his life kind of forced me in part in that direction. And then my cousin, shortly after Tupac's passing, was actually the initial spark, right? He tried to convince me to rhyme, and when he was attempting to convince me, I was resistant, but made the attempt to freestyle. And it was like the best way I can describe it is like it was like a cork like popped in my throat, right? And nothing that I said initially made any sense to me, like while I was saying it, but the feeling of being able to attempting to put my thoughts into rhythmic form was a feeling that I felt required to explore more deeply.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since then, that's like 96, 97. Since then, you've been consistently with it, or was like ever point in time you felt like you had to take a break just to life, or it's been like straight through?
Life has required me to take breaks.
Okay.
I even before I began writing, I was and have suffered with seizures. And so health issues have sometimes kept me from being on stage and traveling as much as I would like, as I would like to.
Understood. Okay. So all right. So we got the preliminaries out of the way. All right. So now that we get to this right here, like I want to ask you a question. I want to start asking all our guests this now. Like, how would you describe, I guess, what's your style?
My
style. We have
style.
a lot of guys who are slam, a lot of guys who are like love poets or more like universalists. Like they speak on various topics. Like what would you say your style is?
I speak on various topics, but like healing is always the goal. So if but I don't know if healing is a style per se, right? Like I'm hip hop influenced, right? I'm a fan of lyricism, so I want the lyrics to really, for those who like lyrics, I want the lyrics to actually like hit,
Mhm.
uh, like hard enough that you want to return for another listen, right? To go back, whether it's to try to catch something that you think you might have missed, or to just be like, I actually heard that and I just really want to hear it again.
Mhm.
Right. So uh that's, but I don't know if how that would be described as a style, right? Whatever whatever the topic is,
Okay.
uh that I write about, I want it to uh both inspire uh the listener,
Mhm.
uh and uh not just inspire them in terms of maybe them writing themselves, but just to inspire them to take what they hear, as it relates to their own life. I say this all the time, to people: if when you hear me speak, uh whatever resonates with you, right? Like take that and apply that to your life, and whatever doesn't resonate with you, like set that aside
Yeah.
until a point in time where it resonates. And if it never does, then don't worry about it.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I know our most recent guest, not most recent guest, but one of our previous guests. I asked her a question like, do you feel as though shorter poems or longer poems kind of get a message across? Because what we do at the Poet Life community, with Poet Life podcast, we try to give people information about not only Poet Life, not poet community, but also the poet industry. So it's two different levels you can look at. Like we got content delivery. We also have like different venues. We have public venues or maybe more private, plan paid for venues, and like though both settings have their own audience, their own crowd, and it's kind of like you want to get the message across to both crowds. And so your delivery is important, your style is important, your content is important. But do you feel as though it may take? I mean, of course, you want to judge the room and know who's in the room, but
Right.
oftentimes, like, do you think it's more effective to get a longer poem in or a shorter poem in? I guess, of course, it depends on the situation, but what do you feel more comfortable with as a poet?
uh Starting out, uh my first time to the stage, the very first poem that I shared with an audience, it was all of about 60 seconds. Right? It might That's introduction, poem, response, me leaving the stage. Right? So the
All in
poem
60 seconds?
itself, yeah, so the poem itself might have been like 30 seconds. Um, but as the years have gone on, I've written pieces that are much longer. Uh, I don't think the length of the piece, I don't think that is a determining factor in its effectiveness.
Okay.
I believe that is really a matter of who you're speaking to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like recently I was watching Black Thought on rewatching Black Thought freestyle. He freestyled for like 10 minutes.
Funk Flex joint?
Right. You
Okay.
know, and so I'm listening to it, and the lines hit harder the second time I was watching it than they did the first time. Right. And 10 minutes is pretty long for a freestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it doesn't, I don't think that the amount of time in the piece, right? However, I think you got to take into consideration people's attention span and the subject matter that you're sharing, like whether it or not it actually interests the people that you're talking to, right? So that circles back to knowing your audience, right? Because I think that there are people who could also sit and listen to that Black Thought freestyle and not respond the way that I would, right? Because the things that he's saying, like it may be certain punchlines that come across that makes sense to me because he's referencing something that I remember from back in the day, or a TV show, or
Right.
another MC's lines that somebody else might not catch. So it might just sound like him rambling on for a long time, even though it sound dope. It might not mean as much to them. Like he could, for somebody else who's not familiar with his career, it might not resonate as much. So I think the length of the piece is not really a determining factor.
Okay. You good, Christoph? Because I have a question.
Yeah, man. I'm just into this conversation. I'm
okay.
simply listening, but I'm also writing down some notes here, man.
Yeah.
You said on your 20th birthday, Tupac passed, right? So that's roughly around the time you started writing, 21, 22, around that age.
Around that age.
Would you say like you were called to write? Because did you say your cousin or your friend? Your cousin. Your cousin kind of pushed you a little bit, nudged you a little bit, say, you should start rhyming, like you should start writing. And you kind of resisted a little bit. What do you think the resistance was? What was that?
The resistance was I didn't think I could do it. It was, for me, the resistance was really simple, right? It was I don't believe that I can do this, so I'm not even gonna try.
I see.
Right? That was it. And I think I'd like to say life has proven me wrong, right? But I when he mentioned it to me, I sat and I listened to him freestyling, listened to someone else we knew at the time freestyling, and I was like, nah, I'm good, right? And then just after a bit of nudging and a couple drinks, right?
Right.
I had the courage, like, kind of built up inside me, and I decided that I would give it a shot. And as I would tell anybody, that first go around, I was horrible.
Yeah.
Right. It was, but once it occurred, like once I felt that feeling, I was just like, I need to try this more. I need to explore it more deeply. And essentially that's what happened.
Gotcha. Did your flow or your way of presenting or performing evolve, from then to now?
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, but yeah.
Absolutely. Initially, my flow initially was mimicry, right? I was mimicking what I thought was good, right? Because I wanted it to sound good, but what I was mimicking was the voice of other people, right? And then and while that sounded good for them, it wasn't me. And so I just needed time to explore myself and find what made sense for me as an artist.
What piece would you say you actually feel like you got the voice down pat? your style, your content, your delivery, how you want to do it? What piece and moment of time in that?
Well, so I think that it's a lot of pieces that fit in that particular category.
Okay.
But I think one that really does it is this piece Labyrinth. It's a piece about my grandmother, uh, which it took me a while to write it. Like I wanted to write a piece about her, like to honor her memory. But every time I wrote the piece, I felt like I had the story, but I didn't capture the spirit. Right? Like everything that I said was like anyone who knew her, I was like, if they hear this, they'll be like, that's about her. But like I didn't just wanted the people who knew her to be able to remember her. I also wanted the people who remembered her to, when they heard it, to like feel her presence. And I knew that I had it when I finished writing it and like read it aloud to myself. And it was like she was in the room with me. So any piece wherein I'm able to do that, like regardless of the subject, right? If I can get both the content, right, or if I could get the letter and the spirit to be cohesive in the piece, then those are the pieces where I feel like my voice is best captured.
Wow. I want to make sure I heard that correctly. You said the poem that you wrote in honor of your grandmother missed the spirit.
No. So I have been trying to write a poem about her for years.
Got you.
And every time I wrote a piece about her, I felt like the pieces captured the letter.
Got it.
But they didn't capture the spirit.
Yeah.
So I didn't like those pieces like never made it to a stage. Right? Because I read them to myself and I was like, that's not it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's cool, but that's not it. When I finally got it down,
got it.
Is when I finally shared it with an audience.
How was that response? How was that feedback?
The feedback from that piece was and has continued to be, people have said that they felt like they like got to know my grandmother. Other people have said that they felt like I was talking about their grandmother. Right? There have been elders who are grandmothers that felt, shared that they felt honored, right? That a grandchild would write this about their grandmother, right? Which just further reinforced that whole capturing of the spirit.
Yeah.
That's good.
Do you think nowadays, 'cause I know we did speak earlier about knowing the room and knowing the audience, and then even comparing Black Thought's freestyle to even like a younger generation. Do you feel as though now you can reach this crowd as effectively as you may have been able to reach the crowd that you was around in your heyday? You know what I'm saying? Because you're not old, but like you're OG in the game, and that's respectfully speaking. So as OG in the game, do you feel as though this generation, not that it's lost, but do you think that, going back to the Black Thought comparison, do you think your lyrics will hit as well or even as hard for this younger generation now?
I wrestle with that in a way.
Okay.
Because I think that some of the things I might, again, using the same Black Thought comparison, some of the things that I might reference, it just might go past somebody because of just lack of familiarity with a particular subject. But I believe that my, me being older, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Okay.
Because if I'm in a space, then where there's someone who already loves poetry, right? But they just happen to be much younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
Then that particular person, right, or the people who fall into that category, if someone has mentioned me to them, then they're listening already with a certain level of expectation, right? But if somebody is just in a space and they don't really, the art form don't matter to them one way or another, they just happen to be out at the poetry spot because it's the place where, some of their friends wanted to go for the evening, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could cut the complete opposite way, right? They could hear me and it could just sound like I'm throwing a whole bunch of words together, trying to sound deep and mean absolutely nothing.
That's interesting that you can, that you can recognize that, because I don't know if a lot of poets can recognize that, or if they have the skill set to recognize or to read the room, you know, not to say that they would change up their whole presentation, if you will, but I don't know. Would you like, so if you did go into a setting where you kind of recognize that, where, all right, last week it was full of older folks, if you will, and then the following week it was more so some younger cats in there. What's the switch up? Is there a switch up, or is there a change of tone? What do you? What's that look like to you?
So I'm thankful that throughout the years, I haven't really been one, but I know that like performing artists, uh, you go and you have a show to do, and many artists come to the show with a set prepared. In terms of reading the room, I let the energy of the room, like I have a certain amount of material that I just got floating around in my mind.
Got it.
And when I get to the microphone, the energy that's present in the room dictates what it is that I'm going to share. And, sometimes that lands perfectly, and other times not so much, right? But the times when it doesn't land, I kind of walk away with the assumption that there must have been someone there,
Gotcha.
right, who needed that particular word, and it just might not have been for the entire room on that night. And okay with that, right? I'm okay with somebody not getting it,
Yeah, for sure.
right? That's I think that's part of the poet's journey,
Yeah.
right? You gotta be okay with being misunderstood. Because if you walk into the room assuming that everybody is gonna understand everything that it is that you have to say, you'll be in for a many amount of rude awakenings.
Yeah, that's real. That leads me to my next question too, because I'm thinking about like just as your career and even now in your career too, like what was it that I guess supercharged your career as a poet? Like going from just the open mic scene to getting paid performances and being called to come here and going to travel. Like what was it that supercharged the whole process to get you to where you actually are now? You know what I'm saying? Like what was that process like from just starting off, not even going through the whole process of starting off, but like what was it like? Was it a moment or a succession of moments where you had just, I guess, put more in line with your lyrics, or just put more in line for the game and just went on more? Like what were the sacrifices you made to actually make this career that you have now?
Interestingly enough, uh there was no supercharging moment. uh what it was is, as I shared, with me having, suffering with seizures,
Mm-hmm.
uh before I got on the road, right? I was just working a 9 to 5, and I had a period in time where I was having so many seizures that I was unable to work. And every time I made the attempt to return to work, I would suffer from more seizures, right? Either like shortly after I would start working. And so since I was already performing locally, like in my hometown, in Norfolk, Virginia, I was already performing in the area. I just decided that I would give a go at doing something where I could be in complete control of my schedule.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So I wouldn't have to worry. Right. If I had a day where I had seizures, then I could just be like, I'm not going to do anything today. Right. I could pick up the phone and be like, listen, I can't make it to this show because of this. And I would not have to worry about somebody saying, don't come back.
Right.
And so that was the motivation. So it was no supercharging moment. It was necessity.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was a necessity to be intentional about creating the life that you wanted to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Needed for it to happen. I mean, I really just I wanted to be in control of my own schedule.
Right. Yeah, I get it for sure. I totally get it, man. If we can speak about healing for a second, man, I think it would help a lot of people, right? You know, we all know, you know, that poetry specifically is known for being a remedy for or medicine in regards to healing, right? And but where have you figured it out to where it's not just medicine, but it's also a tool and resource that can give you the life that you want to live, right? Like, so like for me, I write for others. Like I can name like 5 poems that I wrote like for myself. For whatever reason, I've been given the pen to like write in the voices of others. You know, I can write in the voice of a child, a female, you know, an older person, and it's just interesting that way. But how do you balance your calling to write for healing, but also create a career out of the poetry that you write, if that makes sense at all?
So after getting on the road, right? It really, the whole thing has been an act of faith.
Yes.
I did not. It's weird. As I say it in my own mind, right? It actually sounds both contradictory and foolish. That even though I stepped out to be in control of my own schedule and wanted to make money, I was not really driven by the money, right? I actually went into it. I enjoy it, right? I enjoy writing. I enjoy sharing. I enjoy hearing, right? All of these things. I enjoy reading, right? All of these things in relationship to the art form that I just enjoy, right? So I couple that with I figure if I could make enough, right? It wasn't become a superstar. It was if I could make enough to be able to sustain myself and do what I enjoy, then I'm gonna do that, right?
Yeah.
And then my love for the art form helped me to recognize that if I can also encourage others,
Right.
right, to find what it is that they enjoy. For some people that'll be poetry, you know. For somebody else, you know, that could be engineering, right? But they
Right.
might also like poetry. But if that's what they find that like brings them joy, and they are willing to just push themselves into that, and
Yeah.
I've somehow supported it with by doing the same thing, then my job is doing itself.
Yeah.
Right? I just show up and participate in the work that is going to happen one way or another. uh I'm just hoping that I can support the process, right? Which for me goes back to the healing. uh you know, because if it's something that you love doing, then I believe the thing that you love doing will also help heal you. I don't know if this is actual scripture or if it's just something that I've heard
Mhm.
both religious and spiritual people say, but your gift will make a way for you.
Yeah. Make room for you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Totally. Yeah. You know, I really want, because, all right, so we have uplifting the poetry community and building the poetry industry, right? It could almost be an oxymoron for some people,
Right,
um, right? And I really want poets to get to that healthy middle, that middle ground, because I really don't believe, and there are a lot of poets that feel guilty for just knowing their value. You know what I mean? I think that is the healthy place right there. You know, not being driven by money, you know, because no matter what industry it is, you shouldn't be driven by money, you know. But for some reason, because it's poetry, so many of us feel like, you know, I shouldn't charge this amount because I love it. You know, this is,
Mm.
I do it for the love and all of that, right? All of that. And I'm trying to get to a place and get people to get or help people get to a place where they're not feeling guilty for naming their price because they know their value.
right,
You know what I'm saying? And and just to know that it's not you being greedy, you know, money hungry. It is simply you knowing your value, you know what you offer, you know the value that you can add to that company, that organization, because in the end, they're going to make their money off of the entertainment, the healing that you bring. So why would it be a bad thing for me to get what's due me? The service that I provided you, right? And me just take that $50 that you had in your pocket. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we got to get to a healthy ground where we say, listen, I'm worth more than $50. This pen that I have is golden. You know, I've been given a gift. Yes, I've been given a gift to give it away. At the same time, again, there's a value. There's compensation for the work that I put in, because this is work. It's a lot of
Yeah.
it's a lot on that mental, you know, putting that pen to that paper. You know what I mean? So um um I don't know if this is a question or what, but I just want to make sure that folks get that, you know what I mean, and don't feel guilty about loving what they do, but also knowing that they should receive something in return for giving out so much.
Yeah, I feel like we have spoken before about well, two things actually. The first thing was I know last season Just Me came on. It was like exposure don't pay the bills. You know what I'm saying? One thing he did say, just going there for the love is going to pay the bills. But another thing that we did speak about a lot last year and more so this year now, with I guess is just being the idea of being a public poet, kind of like a public speaker, but being a public poet to where you can go out there and have a set price that you do for your service. It's like motivational speaking, inspirational speaking, it's like that. You're in the lane of a poet, but you put yourself in that professional setting to where you can have the same kind of contract, same kind of engagement, just like a public speaker would have. And that's what kind of like we're advocating for poets, and so the guests that we have been doing that. So yeah, like I just want to piggyback on what Chris was saying. Like that's kind of the idea, just knowing that you are valuable. Because I even thought about like people who teach and how they don't want to necessarily charge for like teaching because they feel as though like it's it's education it shouldn't be. But then you think about just the disparity between professions and the pay discrepancy. Like it's like educators get a limited amount of money comparatively to other professions. So as a poet, like not that we're trying to seek the money, but money is important because we got to do this. And if we, like you say, we love what we do, it should drive us to be able to work hard and build a successful business around it. Because it's already an industry that's going to take, like Christoph was saying, going to take from an entertainment aspect from it already. Like why not position ourselves to where we can benefit as our own independent industry or even independent artists within the industry, to where it's not like so much of a a pimping type thing, like with music industry.
So when I first began to go places and perform, the only people that were booking poets to do anything were other poets, right? So the budgets were smaller,
Right.
right? At least the only people who I knew that were booking poets to do anything were other poets, right? So with the much smaller budgets at the time and the building of a community and an art form, right? Essentially, a lot of it just initially happened for the love, right? But over the years, as more people have become interested in the art form, uh, people who were not directly involved in cultivating it, right? Who weren't coming to the venues and being there till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning because they just wanted to hear poems, right? Those opportunities uh to not only ask for more but demand more because you're speaking with people and organizations who have larger budgets, right? But everybody who just taking $5 at the door, when
Right.
at least that being the standard at the time, right? People taking $5 at the door and it's 20 people here, getting what you worth financially, that uh ain't really gonna work out. But I think that as you go forward in anything, right? The more time you put into it, uh the greater level of recognition you gain within it, the more that you can demand. And if you happen to hit a hot spot, right? Whether that hot spot is an appearance on national television, or a feature on the track of a artist who is like well known in the mainstream, right? You can begin to ask for more money than you would have, right? So I think it's really about taking the time to study, right? Artists, uh, this idea of the starving artist
Right.
uh, is I believe it was the fifth L who I first heard use the term striving artist instead of starving,
Nice.
right? Like we ain't trying to be starving, we striving, right? So just provides this whole concept of, we here to do things to benefit our community and ourselves, and we want to benefit ourselves so that we continue to do things that benefit our communities.
Right.
Yeah.
13, what was your grind like when you first started, man? Like, basically, ultimately, the question is, how did you get to this level of being 13 of Nazareth? I mean, that sentence alone just means a lot. You know what I mean? Like, what steps were you taking? What strategic moves were you making that got you to a level where people are like, yeah, that's the guy, that's 13th of Nazareth?
I just kept showing up.
Mm.
I heard I can't remember who it was that I initially heard say this, but they the phrasing was something like, poetry's popularity exists, in the world in like these 10-year cycles, where it's like really hot for 10 years and then it kind of disappears.
Yeah.
It's hot for 10 more years and then it disappears, and then it's hot for 10 more years and it disappears. And the people who become well known, right? The people who we look back now and we like, this person is legendary in this art form, right? They're the people who stuck around when no one else was paying attention, so that every time they showed up again, right? So, a group of people, a generation saw them, and then the children of that previous generation saw them, and then the grandchildren of the initial generation saw them. And then, so it was like, you got 3 generations of people who loved poetry, and this person's name was present in every single generation.
I see.
So you're saying basically consistency is like the winning ingredient.
Yeah, consistency, right? Because there will be people who are really good at anything,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's not burning hot for them in terms of the amount of attention that is being drawn to that thing, if it's not the most amount of money that could be drawn to that particular thing at that time, right, then they'll just be like, I'm gonna go do something else. And then there could be somebody else who technically, right, from a technical standpoint, might not be considered as good of a writer, as good of a performer as this other person, but they just stick around, determined that this is what they want to do, right?
Yeah.
They dedicate themselves to it, and 15, 20 years go by, and they're the person who is remembered as, legend in their craft.
Mm-hmm.
That leads me to ask you, how did you get your name?
Yeah. Yeah. Right there.
So my birthday is September 13th. My full name has 13 letters. My mother and grandmother both died when I was 13 years old. The
Whoa.
of Nazareth portion comes from a verse in scripture where I believe it's a conversation between Philip and Nathaniel. I think it about no good thing can come from Nazareth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like, it was reflective of my state of mind, right? Like, if I were able to lay out like my lived experience up to the point where I decided to take on this name, and somebody was just to look at it, if they took it all together without knowing me, without knowing where I came from, without knowing how I thought about the world, they could look at my life and say no good thing could come from that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And my response is the same response given in scripture, that they should come and see.
It's crazy because I know when I first heard your name, I was in high school, right? And it was like, all right. My homegirl, she was like, yo, you want to do poetry? You heard what this guy named 13 at Nazareth? And I was like, okay. And then she always said name, and every time I heard your name, I always thought it was like a prophet or something like that. It was like just the name itself, like 13 disciple or something like that. Literally, it's crazy. Like, oh, snap, that's tight. You know what I mean? So you actually breaking it down for me. I didn't even see none of that coming. Like, I was like, oh, okay, cool. But it makes sense.
It's
I
a
know
thing
a
about
lot of times. Back to the point we were making earlier. I know poets in particular who kind of get in that mindset where if it don't get this many likes, it wasn't a good enough poem, or if it doesn't get this many if I don't get this kind of response on this line, it wasn't a good enough thing. And it could be delivery, it could be the people, but oftentimes I know poets who take that like to heart, and they'll be crushed if they post something and they don't get, if it don't hit triple digits or something like that. And it's all because of brothers who actually go viral. You know what I'm saying? We had a guy, Anthony Highland, who he's gone viral on several platforms doing poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And the brother's talented, phenomenal, been in the game for a while. So it's kind of like you gotta respect the skill. But it's also like you can't expect everybody to have that same lane. You understand what I'm saying? Because even what we're doing right now with a podcast, it's a lot of poets who can probably talk poetry, but may not be able to do it in a podcast type setting, or with actual co-hosts or with guests, and it may be more like free conversation. So I think everybody has their lane. And the last thing I wanted to say, because I think last point I wanted to make before I ask the next question, because it's kind of relevant too. Going back to the Black Thought comparison earlier, I heard Cardi B talking about the song that just came out. You know what I'm saying? She had said the reason why she makes these songs in comparison to, or in contrast to other songs that are more conscious, is because the artists who are conscious don't get the listens. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of like what Jay-Z said. He said, when I was young, I rap like Common Sense or something like that. But now I'm older, I rap like Common Sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
having rhyming like Common Sense.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So like it's a lane for individual artists. But I kind of feel like sometimes I see like a lot of artists trying to play the same role. You know what I mean? And I'm sure the same thing with when you were doing your thing back when it was really, because I know like I always think about Def Poetry Jam, like Def Poetry, you know what I'm saying, before Versus was on TV, before it was always Def Poet, Most Def, HBO. It was always that's all I knew in high school and college was that. So that's like my main point of reference for poetry outside of performing myself. When you were in the heat of that, man, like, did you see artists trying to jump out of people's lane, like try to like like you say you started, you kind of like copying other artists and stuff like that, trying to find your own voice. Yeah.
Well, I think that there are people who see something that has a measure of attention or popularity, and they want to be involved in it, but don't want or don't know how to create what it takes to be involved in it yet. So there are people who there have been a range of things that I've seen. There have been people who have gotten on stage with their own work, but the way that they deliver it sounds like identical to someone who they're inspired by. Then there are people who have gotten on the other end of the spectrum. There are people who have gotten on stage with the work of other people and recited it as if it were their own, right? Like they get on stage, and people be in the room like and recognize that that's somebody else's work, right? There have been, stories of people getting on stage and reciting the work of another artist, and people in the room start reciting the poem with them because they know the piece, right? Because it ain't that you reciting the work, it's that you're not giving the artist credit. Because people get up and share, the poets get up. That's one thing that I like about poetry that you know, I mean, and I guess this also happens among singers, right? Like poets essentially do covers, right? They get up, they read other people's poetry, right? But you know, some people get up and read other people's poetry, but don't say that it's other
If
people's
it's somebody
poetry
else,
because they think that they're in front of a room who does not know who this artist is, right? They like it so much and they just want to share it without saying it belongs to someone else.
I actually like. I was in a poetry contest right when I was in college, and I wrote an original piece. Original piece, man. I made it always to the last two. Man, I lost to a guy who recited a poem, and I was like, I know I heard it before. And I was trying to figure. I said the judge they never heard this before, but then he ain't no winning, getting the cash prize and everything. I'm like, bro, like that wasn't your poem. He said, yeah, but you know, it was a good poem. So I felt like if I could read it well, I could, you know, it could work. And I felt like I sat here for like weeks writing this poem, man, and this man went up there and Googled something and just read it and won. I said, bro, like, oh, the game messed up. So that's
But yeah, that also comes from, in part from, I don't know how much part, right? I don't know if this 50% or less or 50% or more, right? But that in part comes from when people are putting together contests but aren't familiar enough with the art form that they're throwing contests for to be able to say that's not your work. Right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, again, a thing, if poetry become popular, right, at a particular moment in time, then some people put together contests because not just to give away money, but because it's an opportunity for them to just make some money, right? And they don't care about the art form one way or another. It's just this is a way to get some money on this particular night. We're gonna give some money away and hopefully make much more in the process. And so, but if you don't care about the art form, like that comes across in whatever it is that you're presenting, right? And whatever part you're presenting in, right? If you're the person at the door and you don't care about the art form, the way you greet people when they come in, that's gonna show up, right? If you on stage, if you the DJ, if you're the host, if you're the promoter, if you design the flyer, and you don't care about the art form itself, that it all of that stuff shows up.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm a flip it a little bit. Kind of transition a little bit. You know, we've heard your wife's side of the story.
Okay.
Right. How did you all become this power poetry couple?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Did you know she was a poet ahead of time? Did that add to the attraction? Like, you know what I'm saying? Talk to me, bro. Like that.
Okay, so being poets is how we met.
Okay.
Yeah, we met on two separate occasions. I was at a venue. I was on stage. I had just finished performing. I came off stage. Her and a friend of hers were on the way out the door. They stopped me as they were leaving. They said, "We really liked your poem." I said, "Thank you." They went their way. I went mine. Right?
Okay.
Real simple. A couple years. What was it, a couple years later? Yeah, a couple years later. CD release party. She was invited as one of the guest performers at my initial CD release party, a duet project I did with this brother Godchild. So Godchild and I released our CD. She was there. She performed. Afterwards, her and her friend, they were there. They were talking to me, remembering me from the previous time we met.
Mhm.
I was still in the 757 at the time.
Mm.
She was already living in this area. I had plans to come up here to perform. She said, let me know when you come up. I'll come out and support you. So I came up here, had people, family, friend that I was supposed to stay with. Got here, uh, tried to get in touch with them and could not. And she was the only other person that I knew in the area. So I reached out to her, and she ended up coming to the bus station to pick me up. I'm pretty sure the version that she told you probably had something to do with me calling and leaving like voice messages and sounding really sad. You know what I'm saying? Uh, like I had been kicked out of the house, and she probably mentioned that I didn't have a cell phone at the time because all I had was a pager. Uh, that all of these things, right? And but initially, it was just we were just friends,
Awesome.
and so we were just friends, two poets hanging out at poetry venues. And people kind of started looking at us like seeing us together all the time and like, are y'all together?
Right.
We like, nah, we just friends, right? And then enough people said it, and we kind of looked at each other one day, like, should we try this? And
Right. What are we?
nah, we're not gonna try it. We friends, we good, we gonna keep it like that. And then, so it was a really, it was really organic in terms of how the relationship developed, and everything else evolved afterward, right?
Yeah.
Including the way that we're viewed as a couple in the art form, right? Like those who admire us, like that just happened, right? It was no seeking. She be herself, I be myself, we be ourselves together. This is where we land.
You both showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how you became 13th of
Yeah.
Of Nazareth. Gotcha. You showed up.
Just showed up.
That's good. I like how that just came all the way around there like that.
Yeah, all the way around, man.
That's
I
sweet.
figure, you listen, you show up enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know,
that's the biggest part of it. Showing
that
up.
is
Yeah.
that's the biggest part. I mean,
Yeah.
because even if like I said, I didn't think I was good initially. I mean, I wasn't trying to go to the stage initially,
Right.
but I spent enough time like writing and wanting to write that you start figuring some things out, right? You
Right.
bump into some people who share some things with you that encourage you to press forward, right? In spite of the fact that you might not have made it to your best self yet,
Mm.
right? I think that's just it's a part for me. The poetry has really been a part of living, right?
Yeah.
My lived experience, the poetry is really integrated into it. And so it's like it's no way I can't examine it separately
Yeah.
from my day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. And that was really the next question, how do you define the poet life? And you literally just did.
Okay, yeah,
Every day.
it's I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
I think that you know. I don't know if it might be possible to separate it, right? but I don't know how. Right, like separating poetry from like my life. It might be a way to do that, but I don't know how. And I haven't tried to figure out how, and I don't have any intentions of trying to figure out how.
I don't think you're supposed to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how and why would you pull yourself away from what you're called to?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you just say the word poetry, then yeah, I can. All right, but if you say what poetry really is to you, and it's a calling, then you're like, oh man, I'm going against what God set up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for some people, it could just be work.
Some people, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like some people, you know, they all of the things that would technically make them a poet. For some people, it could just be that. I don't know anybody personally, at least that I know of, who thinks that way. But I know that there are mechanics to writing a poem. There are mechanics to putting on a good performance. There are mechanics to marketing yourself, right? And if a person has all of the mechanics down, right, then they could do all of those things in the same way that someone goes to whatever their job is,
Yeah.
right? Whatever their 9 to 5 they may have, and they can do all of those things and earn the money from that stuff. And they might not have any personal attachment to the work beyond the money that it earns them.
Right.
Right. So I think that that's technically possible,
Right.
but it doesn't, for me, it doesn't make sense. And the people who I know that I've had conversations like this with, that it doesn't make sense to them either.
Yeah. If you had to tally up your poems, right? And I don't know if you ever looked at this in this way, but um, who would you say you write for? Like I said, I think I just been given the gift and the charge to write for others. Who do you think you write for? Do you write for yourself? Do you write for others? Both?
I oscillate back and forth.
Okay.
Some pieces I write that they're definitely like for me, right? I wrote it specifically for myself. Something I needed to say, something I needed to hear, and hopefully when I share this, it resonates with someone else, right? And then there are other pieces that are written, uh, inspired by a lived situation, uh, for the purpose of speaking to someone going through something.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think it's both, and I think that uh, it's actually healthy
Yeah.
to do that, right? I mean, because the creating itself is something that began for me, right? Like I'm trying to find my voice. I mean, because it's possible that I could have found my voice as a writer and then been like, I want to use my voice for something else, right? I found my voice. I understand how it works. I know what I want to say to the world, but I don't want to say it in poetry. I want to say it elsewhere, right? So, but I think that it's a healthy thing that if you are going to create, for your creativity to oscillate back and forth between being for you and being for others,
Yeah.
right? Because it builds a bridge uh between you get to drawing these lines between yourself and the various audiences that you find yourself in front of, right? And hopefully what you'll find is more similarities than differences, uh, but not let uh, uh, the word I would. More similarities and differences, but recognizing that all the differences ain't necessarily negative.
Okay.
Right? To be different ain't negative.
Yeah.
It's just in and of itself, being different is just different. Right? There are ways in which differences can be negative, but that's a whole other conversation.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, we spoke about this before we pushed that live button, man. What's what's the near future look like for you? I know you're getting acclimated, to this season, this COVID season, this digital season. There was a digital season before, but like this is the digital season now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like straight up, fully. Um, Let me say what I feel like is for you, and then you tell me if even sounds like you could roll in this lane. Like I was telling you before, I see you not needing to find the poetry spots online and again showing up, yeah, for sure, for exercise. That's always great. But in regards to like moving forward, I see you as the elder, bro. Like I see you as the mentor, taking digital calls and just imparting information and knowledge to the younger poets and showing them how to show up, because that's a skill.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
skill in and of itself. Whether it's denial or fear or whatever it might be, that is a learned skill, how to show up.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you uh does that work for you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you need to go out there and perform digitally? What's that look like for you in the near future?
Um. So, in terms of figuring out like exactly how I fit into the digital landscape, uh, that's definitely part of it. In terms of the mentoring artists who are growing in the art form, more interested, that's something that I have indirectly been aiming to do over the years, right? I guess I haven't like set up any
Mm,
like programs wherein I'm doing that, but I've always been open to share
Mm.
with artists like what it is that I have learned along the way that I think might be helpful, like right in the moment. Uh so while that's not uh that particular element is not in my plans uh currently, uh yeah, it might be something that I need to consider putting into my plans. What I am planning to do is throughout the years, all of my work, I have released it via recording. Uh and so I am going to publish uh written work. So that's what's going to be on the horizon for me.
that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Also consider in that written work adding the element of speech. And when I say that, I mean, there's there there are books that are also what is the word I'm trying to find? Audiobooks. Jesus,
Okay.
audiobooks. Turning your written work into audiobooks also, because one, you obviously have the voice for it because you're a spoken word artist, but that lends itself you that lends itself to you being a spoken word artist in the realm of also having audio books, if that makes sense, because everybody loves to read. Not everybody, but folks love to read. But now in this fast-paced lane, if you also add that element to it as an audio book, I think that would add a new dynamic to the industry of poetry. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I love reading, but because of my time constraints, I got 3 kids, I got a wife, I got a 9 to 5. You know, I get my books in when I'm driving. You know, and it would be awesome if poets would also have your poetry books, but also translate it into an audio book too. You know, so that it takes the element of, you know, how poets have CDs, you know, and feel the need to, you know, kind of add music to it. But with audiobooks, you wouldn't have to even do that, because with audiobooks, we're used to just hearing the author's voice. You know what I'm saying? So just think about that too. And it's not really hard to add that element to it. There's features, you know, for Kindle and Audible and stuff like that gives you that opportunity. But that's just another option that you can kind of add to that literary piece too.
Yeah, that's real.
Awesome, man. You know, I was telling Nikki that it would be awesome to get both of you on in the future, and just have that dialogue and watch y'all go back and forth. That would be so dope, man. Kind of get that journey, because you just don't see that a lot. You know, you a lot of times you have the artist, and then the spouse is like the opposite, or they just straight up support. You know, it's just awesome to see both of you all in that lane. But I would love also to see the contrast too. You know, and see how that plays out and stuff like that. You know, man, I really appreciate you carving out some time for us, man. This has been enlightening. You know, I've been taking notes, man, and I'm sure for those who are listening to us, they're like, man, I keep hearing the name, but I finally, outside of the YouTube videos, you know,
outside of YouTube,
you know what I'm saying? I finally got a chance to like hear his heart and hear his mind, you know. So we really appreciate you coming on to the Poet Life podcast, man. Thank you, man.
It's like being a poetry hero. I ain't gonna lie. Like I said, when I first heard the name, I'm like 13. Like it's like the prophet or something, man. Just keep that's what I'm saying in my head, bro. Like I'm trying to tell you, man.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. Thank y'all for having me on.
Yeah, so let me ask you before you leave. When was the last time you fumbled on a poem? Because before you got on, like I've been watching videos, and it's like you don't mess up. Like it's like you got it in your head.
No miss, man.
Hey man, listen. So I shared earlier that you know, I have a certain amount of material in my head, and I go to the stage, and like whatever comes out is what comes out. So occasionally I'll want to recite something, right? Like I just feel like this is the night where I want to just share. Like I don't want to be guided, right? I want to just do the piece that I want to do. And on numerous occasions throughout the years, whenever that would occur, I would go to the stage and I'm gonna do this poem, and I'll start reciting the piece that I want to recite. And then the words of the piece that I should have been sharing, I will hear those words in my head. And if I continue reciting the piece, because right, I've already started, so I've committed myself. So the words of the other piece will get louder in my head until I can't remember what it is that I'm saying, and actually have to stop and recite the piece that's playing out in my mind.
Wow. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Those are the times when I mess up.
But is it really a mess up though? Because I'm sure on stage it just goes 3 cent 1 piece, and he's probably like, oh, you know what? Oh,
no, it's not. But it's not because okay. I don't. You know, the segue is not that smooth for me.
Okay.
Right? It's really. I feel like
you gotta take a dramatic
the spirit want to have its way and make it real awkward for me. Right? It's like it literally be like the verbal crack in the sidewalk that you trip over, like while walking down the street. Okay. Right? Like you could be on the street like all by yourself, but if you hit that crack in the sidewalk and you stumble like 3 or 4 steps, like nobody saw you,
everybody see you,
but it ain't comfortable. You feel like somebody had to see that. Like it couldn't have been me by myself. Yeah.
Man, that's so life right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, all right, God, I see this path that you have for me, but look, you know, I'm about to go over here real quick.
I'm gonna go over here and do this right here, and you know, his spirit be like, hey, you gonna come right back here,
right?
And you gonna do what it is, and then I go do the other piece, and it just is fluid, right? As if that was the intention all of the time.
Wow, I don't know why I asked that question. It just came to me because literally, I think last night I can't remember which poem that you were doing, but it was on YouTube, and I was like it sounds like he just doesn't mess up at all. Like, yeah, you know, but that's dope, man. I think that whole statement that you made was a straight up metaphor for life. And I think we're going to end it right there, man. Again, thank you so much. We plan to stay connected with you. You know, your episode drops in about 3 or 4 weeks. Our episode drops on Mondays, and the same week that this episode drops, if you have the time on that Friday, we want to do one of those live Zoom master classes where folks can come on in and just kind of ask you questions and kind of pick your brain a little bit, and you can kind of just pour out to them. You know, I really anticipate a packed house in there, man. And if you have that time, man, we would love to have you. The invitation is there, and so we'll talk about that. You know, I want to have you answer on the screen, you know. Yeah, we'll talk about it. J. Rod, do you have anything left for him?
I appreciate you guys being here, man. For real, like I'm trying to tell you, man. It's like profit, man. I feel you, bro. I feel you, man.
I'm glad. I'm happy to be able to sow into the lives of other artists. In a way that hopefully helps them to move toward being the best version of themselves, right? And into the lives of people, for that matter, for the same reason, right? Because you don't have to be an artist to benefit from the things that artists may share with each other, right? Definitely. You just got to be willing to listen.
Awesome.
Really appreciate it, man.
Listen, it's the Poet Life Podcast. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Go to our website, thepoetlife.com. If you need some gear, some poetry gear to perform in or just to represent the industry, the community, go to poetlifegear.com. Subscribe to our YouTube page, Poet Life TV, but also subscribe to Poet Life Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you all for listening, guys. This is the Poet Life Podcast. It's Christoph Wrights, 13th of Nazareth, and J. Rod D. See y'all soon.
Peace.
13, man. Thank you so much, bro.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, keep your head, man, and stay healthy, bro. And again, you'll be getting some correspondence from me, man, because like I said, I really want to see where we can offer that that mentorship to other poets, because again, I've been getting that question a lot, you know, like how can I like just ask that person a question, and so we'll put our brains together. Just being able to have the poets that we have on, the legends in the game and stuff like that. People are like, man, if you got to connect like that, you gotta just like be able to present it to folks. And so that's what we want to do, man. So I'm not gonna hold you too much. It's the weekend. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk. All right.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, man. Enjoy your weekend, bro.
Peace.
All right, bro.
I think we'll talk.
All right, bro.
All right.
Introducing the Poet Life Podcast. Go check it out today on your favorite platforms, including iTunes, Apple Music, and the website, thepoetlife.com.
Find a way. Find a way.